The server room hummed with a quiet intensity that Maya Rodriguez had come to love. Rows of quantum processors created a soft blue glow, their cooling systems whispering like electronic lungs breathing in the heart of São Paulo's most advanced research facility. Outside, the city pulsed with its usual chaotic energy. But here, between lines of code and quantum entanglement, something extraordinary was taking shape. Maya's fingers moved with practiced precision, her neural interface allowing her to dance between complex algorithmic landscapes that would appear incomprehensible to most. She wasn't just a programmer. She was a digital archaeologist, hunting for patterns that didn't belong. The anomaly had first appeared 3 weeks ago, a microscopic deviation in global communication networks that most would have dismissed as background noise. But Maya knew better. Her work with the Global Xenosignal Research Consortium had taught her that the most significant discoveries often began as the faintest of whispers. On her primary display, a complex web of connections slowly took shape. Quantum-enhanced detection algorithms picked up electromagnetic signatures that seemed to shimmer between existence and non-existence. Something was watching. Something was listening. "Got you," Maya murmured, her eyes reflecting the intricate network of data points that were slowly revealing their secrets. Thousands of kilometers above, the Zalaxian scout ship hung in Earth's orbit like a predatory ghost. Commander Krulax reviewed standard first contact protocols with the clinical detachment of a species that had encountered hundreds of emerging civilizations. Humanity was just another entry in the vast galactic database, a primitive species on the cusp of technological adolescence, remarkable only in their potential for eventual assimilation. What Krulax didn't realize was that humanity's first response was already in motion. The global network Maya was part of was unlike any communication system the Zalaxians had ever encountered. It wasn't a hierarchical structure with clear command centers, but a living, breathing organism of interconnected intelligence. Hackers, scientists, engineers, and curious minds from every corner of the planet were already dissecting the alien presence. In a small apartment in Mumbai, a retired telecommunications engineer named Raj Mehta noticed unusual packet transmissions. In Tokyo, a graduate student's machine learning algorithm began picking up strange quantum fluctuations. In Cape Town, a collective of open-source researchers started sharing encrypted notes about unexplained data anomalies. Maya's discovery was becoming a global conversation, not through official channels, but through the intricate web of human curiosity and collaboration. The quantum detection array suddenly spiked. Maya leaned forward, her neural interface heightening her perception. The alien ship's communication systems were sophisticated, but they were about to meet a species that understood technology not as a tool, but as a living language. A message began to take shape, not a traditional communication, but a complex digital fingerprint that would serve as humanity's first true response to an extraterrestrial presence. It wasn't a signal of fear. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was an invitation to a conversation that would change everything. Commander Krulax would soon learn that humanity was nothing like the reports suggested. They were about to meet a species that didn't just adapt. They transformed. The United Nations Emergency Contact Chamber looked nothing like the sterile diplomatic halls of traditional meetings. Screens covered every surface, displaying real-time data from every continent, every research facility, every communication network. At the center stood Dr. Elena Rodriguez, her presence both calm and electric. Behind her, a mosaic of humanity's response to first contact was taking shape. To her left, a live feed from a Tokyo comedy club showed comedians crafting alien contact jokes that were simultaneously a form of cultural defense and genuine curiosity. To her right, a split screen displayed scientific teams from Cambridge, Beijing, and São Paulo collaborating in real time, their discussions translated instantly by quantum AI systems. "We are not going to play their game," Elena said quietly to the assembled global representatives. Her voice carried the weight of generations of human resilience. "We're going to rewrite the rules of first contact." The Zalaxian communication protocols were sophisticated, designed to categorize and often subjugate emerging civilizations. They expected fear, confusion, or desperate attempts at diplomacy. Instead, humanity was preparing a response that would become legendary across the galaxy. The global transmission began not with a single voice, but with a symphony of human experience. First came the scientific presentations, rapid-fire demonstrations of human technological understanding. Quantum physicists explained complex theories alongside engineers showcasing breakthrough technologies. It wasn't a show of force, but an intellectual invitation. "Look at us," the presentation said. "We are curious. We are complex." Then came the cultural exhibition. A flamenco dancer in Madrid moved in perfect synchronization with a traditional Japanese taiko drumming ensemble. An indigenous Australian storyteller shared creation myths that segged into a hip-hop performance from Brooklyn. A classical orchestra in Vienna played alongside electronic musicians from Johannesburg. The comedy segment was perhaps the most unexpected. Comedians from around the world took turns crafting jokes about alien contact, each performance a subtle demonstration of human adaptability and psychological resilience. They weren't mocking the potential threat. They were processing it through humor, showing an emotional intelligence that defied standard diplomatic protocols. Dr. Rodriguez's message was the centerpiece, a communication that was part invitation, part challenge, part philosophical exploration. "We don't know you," her message began, her voice clear and direct. "But we're profoundly interested in learning. Are you explorers or conquerors? Scientists or soldiers? The universe is vast enough for curiosity." The Advanced Cognitive Simulation Center looked like nothing more than a converted warehouse on the outskirts of San Francisco. To the untrained eye, it was just another tech facility. To those who understood what happened inside its walls, it was humanity's most profound training ground. Tommy Chen sat perfectly still, his 10-year-old frame barely visible against the massive holographic display. Unlike most children his age, Tommy wasn't playing a game. He was solving problems that would make seasoned military strategists question their entire approach to spatial dynamics. Admiral Zorak's surveillance feed initially appeared routine. Another human child, another simulation. But something was different. The holographic scenario changed rapidly, a complex stellar navigation challenge that would typically require years of specialized training. Most adult pilots would struggle with the multidimensional problem set. Tommy's response was instantaneous, his neural interface allowing him to process information at a speed that defied conventional understanding. What the Zalaxians didn't understand was that this wasn't just a simulation. It was a carefully designed cognitive development program that had revolutionized human learning over the past decade. Every challenge was a multi-layered puzzle, part technological problem, part psychological assessment, part creative thinking exercise. Tommy's fingers moved with a dancer's grace across the holographic interface. He wasn't just navigating a simulated starship, he was reimagining the very concept of spatial movement. Where a traditional pilot might see obstacles, Tommy saw opportunities. Where a standard navigation system would calculate the most efficient route, he was exploring possibilities that didn't yet exist. In the observation room, Dr. Aria Nakamura watched with a mixture of professional interest and maternal pride. She was one of the primary architects of the Advanced Cognitive Simulation Program, a system that had transformed human learning from a linear process to a multidimensional exploration of potential. "Watch his approach to the quantum drift problem," she muttered to the research team. The holographic display showed a nearly impossible stellar navigation scenario, multiple gravitational wells, unpredictable particle storms, and complex spatial anomalies. A traditional navigation system would have calculated hundreds of potential routes, each with diminishing probabilities of success. Tommy did something entirely different. He began to treat the entire scenario as a living, breathing system, not something to be conquered, but something to be understood and collaborated with. Admiral Zorak's advanced alien surveillance system began to malfunction, not through any technical failure, but because the data stream from Tommy's simulation defied the Xylaxian computational models. The child was generating solution paths that shouldn't exist, creative, intuitive approaches that broke every known rule of spatial navigation. The t-shirt Tommy wore was typical of a 10-year-old, some incomprehensible joke about cats and quantum mechanics. But his mind was operating at a level that would reshape humanity's understanding of cognitive potential. What the Xylaxians were watching was more than a simulation. It was a glimpse into humanity's true nature, a species that didn't just solve problems, but fundamentally reimagined the concept of problem-solving. Tommy completed the simulation with a series of maneuvers that would have been considered impossible by any standard galactic measurement. He looked up, grinned, and asked Dr. Nakamura if he could have pizza for lunch. The universe had just changed, and it didn't even know it yet. The Global Technological Integration Center resembled a cathedral of innovation. Spanning 3 city blocks in Geneva, it was a testament to humanity's collaborative potential, a place where the boundaries between nations, disciplines, and imagination lured into something unprecedented. General Marcus Chen stood at the center of a massive circular room, holographic displays dancing around him like living data constellations. Fragments of alien technology, recovered from minimal traces left by the Xylaxian scout ship, were being dissected, analyzed, and reimagined at a speed that would shatter any conventional understanding of technological development. "We're not studying their technology," Chen muttered to Dr. Camila Okoye, the lead quantum systems analyst. "We're having a conversation with it." The room buzzed with a kind of controlled chaos. Teams from every continent worked in synchronized patterns, a global brain attacking a singular challenge. A quantum physicist from Mumbai worked alongside a materials engineer from Sao Paulo, their collaboration mediated by AI translation systems that captured not just words, but the subtle nuances of creative thinking. What made humanity's approach unique was not just their technological prowess, but their fundamental approach to understanding. Where other species might reverse engineer, humans sought to comprehend. Where others would copy, humans would transform. The alien communication module they were studying was a marvel of technological sophistication. Its quantum entanglement mechanisms were decades, perhaps centuries, beyond current human technology. But instead of being intimidated, the research teams saw it as an invitation. Dr. Okoye's team had already begun to unravel its fundamental principles. What initially appeared to be an impossibly complex communication system was slowly revealing its underlying logic. But humanity wasn't content with simply understanding. They were already imagining improvements. Look at how they manage quantum state preservation, a young researcher named Alejandro pointed out. His fingers danced across a holographic interface, pulling apart the alien technology's infrastructure like a child dismantling a complex toy. Their approach is linear. We could create a multidimensional model that would increase communication bandwidth by at least 300%. Dr. Okoye finished, a smile spreading across her face. The Xylaxian technological fragments were more than just objects of study. They were seeds of potential, and humanity was a garden of impossible growth. Distributed across the globe, thousands of research teams worked in what could only be described as a technological symphony. Open-source platforms shared insights in real time. Machine learning algorithms cross-referenced data faster than any single human mind could comprehend. What seemed like chaos was actually the most sophisticated collaborative system ever conceived. General Chen watched a live feed showing how a breakthrough in Sao Paulo was already being adapted by a team in Nairobi, which then informed researchers in Sydney. This wasn't just global collaboration. This was a living, breathing technological organism. The alien technology was revealing something profound about humanity. They didn't just adapt, they transformed. Every technological challenge was an opportunity for reimagination. By the time the Xylaxians would realize what was happening, humanity would have not just understood their technology, they would have transcended it. "We're ready," Chen said quietly, watching the holographic displays pulse with potential. Let them come. The first wave of Zalaxian attack came precisely as their strategic models predicted. A swift, overwhelming assault designed to neutralize planetary defenses before humanity could mount a meaningful response. They were catastrophically wrong. In the Global Command Center, Maya Rodriguez sat at the heart of a technological marvel that defied every known principle of defensive warfare. Her neural interface pulsed with 1,000 simultaneous connections, each one a lifeline of human potential. The Zalaxian fleet approached in a mathematically perfect formation, a strategy that had decimated hundreds of emerging civilizations across the galaxy. Their quantum weapons could theoretically neutralize entire continental defense systems in milliseconds. Their shield technologies were considered impenetrable. What they didn't understand was that humanity had been preparing for this moment in ways no conventional military could comprehend. Satellites, some official, many cobbled together by private research groups, universities, and even crowd-funded space initiatives, came to life. They weren't just defensive instruments. They were adaptive, living networks that changed configuration faster than the alien targeting systems could process. In Mumbai, a team of young programmers who had been developing distributed computing networks for climate research suddenly found their algorithms becoming a global defense mechanism. In Cape Town, renewable energy grid controllers transformed into a planetary early warning system. A research station in Antarctica became a critical communication relay point. The attack that was supposed to take minutes began to unravel in seconds. Makeshift communication networks, built from everything from underground fiber optic lines to repurposed cellular towers, created a defensive web that the Zalaxians couldn't predict. Where a traditional military would have a clear command structure, humanity's defense was a living, breathing organism. General Marcus Chen watched the initial assault with a calm that bordered on anticipation. "They're fighting the war we would have fought 50 years ago," he muttered to his command team. Each Zalaxian weapon strike was met not with a direct counterattack, but with a response that fundamentally altered the nature of the conflict. Quantum communication networks redirected energy signatures. Adaptive algorithms turned the aliens' own technological superiority against them. Maya Rodriguez was the conductor of this impossible symphony. Her neural interface allowed her to see the entire planetary defense as a single living system. Where the Zalaxians saw targets, she saw possibilities. Each alien weapon strike became an opportunity to learn, to adapt, to transform. The battle wasn't just about survival. It was about redefining the very concept of conflict. Alien commanders watched in mounting horror as their perfectly calculated assault dissolved into chaos. Their targeting systems became increasingly erratic. Communication networks collapsed. What should have been a swift pacification turned into a nightmare of unpredictability. Humanity wasn't just defending. They were having a conversation, a brutal technological dialogue that rewrote the rules of engagement. As the first wave of the attack collapsed, the Zalaxian High Command realized something terrifying. They were no longer dealing with a primitive species to be conquered. They were facing a civilization that had just learned how to fight by completely changing the nature of fighting itself. The universe held its breath. Humanity was just getting started. The silence after battle was unlike anything in galactic records. Admiral Zorak stood on the bridge of his damaged flagship, surrounded by systems that no longer responded to traditional commands. The defeat wasn't just technological. It was philosophical. Humanity had done something unprecedented. They had transformed a potential conquest into a profound communication. Scattered across the damaged Zalaxian fleet, senior officers tried to comprehend what had just happened. Their most sophisticated battle algorithms had been rendered meaningless. Their quantum weapons had been turned into elaborate paperweights. Their communication systems were now conduits of human curiosity rather than instruments of domination. The first transmission came unexpectedly. Not a declaration of victory, not a threat, but an invitation. "We'd like to understand." The message began, signed by Dr. Elena Rodriguez and a collective of global research leaders. Not just your technology, but you. On Earth, the aftermath was equally complex. The Global Integration Center, which had been the nerve center of humanity's defense, now looked more like a diplomatic think tank. Researchers who had been preparing for war were now drafting frameworks for communication. Maya Rodriguez stood beside her mother, watching the first real-time quantum communication with the alien fleet. Her neural interface was still active, creating a bridge between human and Galaxian communication systems that defied everything known about interspecies dialogue. "They don't understand," Maya whispered to Elena. "They expected us to be either conquered or conquerors. We're something else entirely." The Galaxian High Command was in complete disarray. Their entire strategic model, developed over millennia of galactic interactions, had been dismantled by a species that didn't follow any known rules of engagement. Humanity had demonstrated something revolutionary. Conflict could be a form of communication, resistance a method of understanding. Admiral Zorak found himself experiencing an emotion closest to human wonder. The species he had come to catalog had instead catalogued him, revealing the limitations of the Galaxian perspective, the narrow understanding of potential that had defined their galactic interactions for centuries. Tommy Chin, the young simulator prodigy, watched the global broadcasts with a child's mixture of curiosity and matter-of-fact acceptance. To him, this wasn't a miraculous moment. It was simply how intelligent beings should interact. The quantum communication channels began to stabilize, but they weren't channels of negotiation or surrender. They were channels of exploration, of mutual curiosity. Humanity wasn't interested in defeating the Galaxians. They were interested in understanding them. "We're not going to ask you to leave," the next transmission read. "We're going to ask you to stay, to talk, to learn." It was a radical proposition. In the entire history of the Galactic Confederation, no emerging civilization had ever responded to a potential conquest with such a comprehensive, nuanced approach. The Galaxian fleet hung in Earth's orbit, no longer predators, no longer conquerors. For the first time in their long history, they were students. Humanity had just redefined the very concept of first contact. The universe watched and learned. The United Nations Cosmic Dialogue Chamber was nothing like traditional diplomatic spaces. Designed specifically for this unprecedented moment, it was a masterpiece of architectural and technological innovation. Holographic interfaces merged seamlessly with organic materials, creating an environment that was simultaneously alien and intimately human. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center, surrounded by a delegation that defied every conventional diplomatic model. Scientists sat alongside artists. Military strategists were positioned next to cultural anthropologists. Young researchers like Maya Rodriguez worked alongside seasoned diplomats, their neural interfaces creating a collective intelligence that transformed every interaction. The Galaxian delegation looked overwhelmed. Their rigid hierarchical structure had no framework for the fluid, collaborative approach humanity was presenting. Where they expected formal protocols, they found an intricate dance of ideas, a communication style that was more living conversation than traditional negotiation. Admiral Zorak found himself in the most challenging diplomatic assignment of his millennia-long career. The human approach to first contact was nothing like the hundreds of planetary encounters in the Galactic Confederation's historical records. "We're not interested in your submission," Elena began, her voice calm and direct. "We're interested in your story." The translation systems struggled to capture the nuance. It wasn't just a linguistic challenge, it was a fundamental difference in communication paradigms. Humans were proposing something radical. A genuine exchange of knowledge, culture, and perspective. The holographic displays around the chamber began to shift. Instead of traditional diplomatic presentations, the humans were sharing something more profound. Cultural performances merged with scientific demonstrations. A traditional Japanese tea ceremony played out simultaneously with a quantum physics presentation. Indigenous storytellers shared creation myths alongside astronomical research. Tommy Chen, now serving as the youngest diplomatic advisor in human history, demonstrated a level of intuitive understanding that left the Xylaxian observers stunned. Where their diplomatic protocols demanded rigid formality, he approached the interaction with a blend of scientific curiosity and childlike wonder. "Your technology is fascinating," Tommy said during one of the initial exchanges, "but I'm more interested in how you think. How do you dream? What makes you curious?" The Xylaxian High Command had no framework for such a question. Their entire civilization was built on hierarchical knowledge transfer, technological superiority, and controlled expansion. Humanity was proposing something entirely different, a collaborative exploration of potential. Maya Rodriguez managed the complex communication networks, her neural interface creating bridges between human and Xylaxian communication systems that defied everything known about interspecies dialogue. Each transmission was more than an exchange of information. It was a living, evolving conversation. The Galactic Confederation's protocols began to crumble. Here was a species that didn't fit any existing model, simultaneously vulnerable and powerful, primitive and advanced, local and cosmic. As the first day of negotiations concluded, it became clear that this was no ordinary first contact. Humanity wasn't just meeting an alien civilization. They were reimagining the very concept of cosmic interaction. The universe had been put on notice. Diplomacy would never be the same again. The first true interstellar diplomatic vessel gleamed unlike any spacecraft in galactic history. It wasn't a weapon of war or a symbol of technological dominance. It was a living testament to human potential, a ship that was part research facility, part cultural embassy, part collaborative learning environment. Tommy Chen stood on the bridge, no longer the child simulator prodigy, but a young strategist who embodied humanity's cosmic potential. Beside him, Maya Rodriguez managed the ship's quantum communication systems, her neural interface creating connections that defied traditional understanding of space and communication. The vessel carried more than a diplomatic team. It was a microcosm of human diversity. Scientists, artists, philosophers, engineers, and cultural experts who understood that exploration was about more than technological advancement. It was about understanding. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now leading the first human interstellar mission, watched her team with a mixture of maternal pride and scientific curiosity. The Xylaxian observers who had once come to categorize humanity were now collaborators, their own vessel accompanying the human ship as an equal, not a conquered enemy, but a partner in exploration. "We're not just going out there to explore," Tommy said during the pre-launch briefing. "We're going to learn, to connect, to understand." The ship's design reflected this philosophy. Modular spaces that could be reconfigured for scientific research, artistic creation, or cultural exchange. Communication systems that didn't just translate languages but attempted to bridge conceptual frameworks. Every system was adaptive, collaborative, transformative. Admiral Zorak, now a reluctant but genuinely curious collaborator, watched the launch with a perspective forever changed. The Galactic Confederation's millennia-old protocols had been dismantled by a species that refused to be categorized, controlled, or understood through traditional lenses. As the ship prepared to venture beyond known space, it carried something more profound than advanced technology. It carried a way of thinking that would reshape cosmic interaction. The quantum communication arrays came alive, not as weapons or defensive systems, but as bridges of understanding. Each transmission was a conversation, each connection an opportunity for mutual growth. The ship didn't just travel through space, it created space for understanding. Maya's neural interface picked up subtle communication patterns that previous generations would have missed. Where other species saw barriers, she saw potential conversations. The ship's systems responded not just to technical commands, but to the collective intention of its crew, a living, breathing entity of human potential. Onboard experiments blurred the lines between scientific research, artistic expression, and philosophical exploration. A quantum physicist might collaborate with a traditional storyteller. An engineer could find inspiration in a musical composition. The boundaries between disciplines, between cultures, between species, began to dissolve. The Xylexian vessel that accompanied them was already changing. Their rigid hierarchical systems were beginning to adapt, to become more fluid, more collaborative. Humanity's greatest export wasn't technology, it was a way of thinking. As they approached the edge of known space, Tommy looked out at the cosmic expanse. This wasn't just a mission of exploration. It was a mission of transformation. The universe had been waiting for humanity, not as conquerors, not as the conquered, but as partners in an endless, beautiful conversation.